Our house in Sandymount looked out to the bay. We had a short driveway full of weeds, a square of lawn, a black ironwork fence. If we crossed the road, we could stand on the curved seawall and look a good distance across the bay. A bunch of palm trees grew at the end of the road. They stood smaller and more stunted than palms elsewhere, but exotic nonetheless, as if invited to come watch the grey Dublin rain. Corrigan sat on the wall, banging his heels and looking out over the flat strand towards the water. I should have known even then that the sea was written in him, that there would be some sort of leaving.
Come here, what's a Dublin lad doing, trying to write a novel about New York in the way you've written this? I mean, because it does claim to be an absolute New York novel.
Yeah, but
are you a New Yorker now?
No, I'm an Irish New Yorker. I'm a Gael and a New Yorker at the same time. See, I think I'm interested in this notion that we're sort of all international mongrels of sorts. That we're, you know, this Michael Ondaatje notion that we're the international bastards of the world, and that any story is, we have access to any story. But I have to firmly believe that this is an Irish novel and an American novel at the same time.
There's a great deal about the presence and absence of God in it, which is a very interesting moment because, I mean, there's an assumption that a kind of world-weary atheism is the dominant mindset in so-called advanced circles.
Right.
But here's Corrigan. But what he's looking for God, he's looking for Simone Weil's God, a God
That's
of
right.
justice.
That's right.
He
says,
starts here on Sandymount Strand. He starts his search for God.
This is exactly where it starts, and that was interesting to me for an Irish character to want to go to New York and to work with the hookers and to work with the down and outs. And for him, he says at one stage, he looks at the world and he says, someday the meek might actually want it. And what happens is that he sees an angel up in the air. He sees a man on a tightrope. It's sort of an anti-crucifixion image. A man standing on top of the rope. And he searches then for his God in all the small moments of the city. A man high in the air while a plane disappears, it seems, into the edge of the building. One small scrap of history meeting a larger one. As if the walking man were somehow anticipating what would come later. The intrusion of time and history, the collision point of stories. We wait for the explosion, but it never occurs. The plane passes, the tightrope walker gets to the end of the wire. Things don't fall apart.
What strikes me about the book is it's a 9/11 novel, right? But it's actually set 35 years ago, or, you know, set back in 74.
74.
So it's a kind of retrospective prophecy.
After 9/11, there was sort of a level ground of meaning. Everything came down. Everything on the street seemed to have meaning. You'd see a car and there were parking tickets piling up, or a lone dog walking through the streets of Manhattan. And everything seemed to relate back. You'd look at a little fire hydrant, it seemed to relate back to 9/11.
The thing that struck me too about it is very much a novel of verticals. I mean, it's not just that Philippe Petit is walking way up there and how it's these great vertical symbols of New York's greed and avarice and hubris that get brought down. But also when you have the high, you're also looking down at the low. So you have the foul rag and bone shop of the heart.
That's nice.
But you also have the flying angels.
Right.
You know, and it's that sense of New York as the city of aspirations, vertical aspirations. It's a kind of a glass and concrete Icarus story.
Yeah, and then you have the subconscious mind of the city as well, you know, back down in the Bronx and in the tunnels and in the subway systems and things like that. So,
and yet there's grace and redemption down there as well.
But you see, I believe in grace and redemption, and you do too. I mean, I think we all eventually do. Many years ago, I spent some time in the subway tunnels of New York, and one of the things that all the homeless people would say to me would be, when I get out of here, not if I get out of here. And they could be living in the worst possible situations.
The elevation of the heart is all in the internal dialogue with the self, isn't it?
Well, that's it. And I don't know, you know, where these characters come from. But sometimes the trick is that as a writer, I don't always know what I'm doing. Do you know what you're doing?
Not at all. No. I mean, you're right to find out how it ends up.
Exactly. It's about mystery, right? In the evenings, he walked up the road past the Martello Tower to the abandoned public baths, where he balanced on top of the seawall, arms held wide. On weekend mornings, we strolled with our mother, ankle deep in the low tide, and looked back to the row of houses, the tower, and the little scarves of smoke coming up from the chimneys. Two enormous red and white power station towers broke the horizon to the east, but the rest was a gentle curve, with gulls on the air, the mail boats out of Dunleary, the scud of clouds on the horizon. Our job is to lay out an emotional landscape into which other people go. So, you know, I'm interested in creating photographs. The green graphena, le focal, are there for, right?
Grabbing the sun.
Yeah. Personally, as a writer, I had to go abroad first and understand other people and then come back home. Part of what I was doing with the Corrigan section, the first chapter of the novel, was returning to Ireland. And I think I've been spinning in lots of different directions for a number of years in order to come home. Because part of me, like many Irish writers, were sort of interested in trying to expand the borders of the Irish novel. Joyce said, he said in a letter to Frank Budgeon, he said, I've been so long out of Ireland that I can all at once hear her voice in everything.
Do you believe you're a writer yet?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. I would have to say yes. Yeah.